Okay, for our closing presentation, I would like to welcome to the stage the director at JLL for PropTech, Jordan Kostelac. Jordan has been a respected leader in the industry, and we're absolutely honored to have him as our closing speaker for the day. Jordan's presentation will be, "The Talk is Expensive, Busting PropTech Cliches." Jordan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so first I want to thank the last panel for hating the word PropTech, since it's right in the middle of my job title and right in the name of this conference. But it's good to kind of take a stab at it, to sort of poke holes in these terms that we kind of rely on as a crutch. That's what my talk is about today, is to take that whole notion one step further. So whether it's the meaningless platitudes or these phrases that seem intuitive but ultimately don't really say anything, the entire conversation around technology, and particularly our topic today, PropTech, is sort of been mired in getting a free pass to just kind of say things that, like I said, don't mean anything or don't necessarily help us achieve this big goal that we're all here to do today, which is to leave our industry better than we found it with the tools that we're provided with and what we're creating. So if we truly want to affect change, first we've got to start with changing what we're saying to have some meaning, and more importantly, be accessible to all the people out there that, we're saying won't adopt these technologies. So let's start with a very big part of this. What is PropTech? It's the most logical place to start is with the definition itself. And like many exciting advancements that humans have, it often gets hidden behind this shroud of arcana, mysticism, or just obfuscation, right? Just using the word to sort of dazzle everybody. But it means that when we have these legitimate solutions, there's so much education required, right? You cannot educate your way into a market. You have to make it accessible. There was talk very early today about Apple and how the dawn of the smartphone changed everything. Apple didn't invent the smartphone. They made it accessible. They normalized the technology. We need to be normalizing not just technology for the property industry, but the speech in which we help people understand and embrace it. So my friend Mark loves to just challenge even this term, PropTech. He says, if property managers are using Outlook, is that PropTech, right? You've skipped ahead one for me, sorry. But beneath the obnoxiousness of the portmanteaus, right? Take this sector and add tech, right? All commerce in 2022 and beyond is something tech, right? Unless you're talking about going to a laundry place and they're still using the abacus and there's only 2 of those left in Hong Kong, we're all using tech. It's embedded in the processes that we have every day. Sometimes the tech just goes crazy right behind you. But I define PropTech as any innovation or technology that creates a better customer experience or removes human tedium from property-specific processes. So no, Mark, if you're watching, or if I send you this recording later, Outlook is not PropTech by my definition. But what I really urge everybody to do as we're reframing these cliches or the conversation is just know your definition. The test, before we get into any sophistication, is whether or not a technology is viable is, does it meet your definition of PropTech? It's a simple A/B test. That's what everybody should be starting with. So you hear this one a lot, or some version of this. The pandemic has accelerated the rate of PropTech adoption. I don't know if this statement is true or false. I have seen no conclusive evidence to say that it is true. I've also not really, there's nothing to disprove whether, to tell me that it's false, but does it actually help us achieve this goal of creating industry-wide adoption? Does it really tell us anything that changes what our mission is or makes our mission easier? No, it doesn't, right? Some technologies, yes. People turn on video with VC more than they did in 2019. I'll admit that. We're in an office of about 600 people right now, and half of these people spend their day video conferencing each other from 2 or 3 desks away. So yes, we've adopted that technology, but not necessarily for the better. But again, phrases like this we talk about filler words. I just used one now. I said, and I'll probably throw a sort of and an in there. This is just a much longer, more sophisticated filler phrase. And these are the things we want to start just putting to rest. So, next one. The property industry is a laggard. This gem, right? We're being self-deprecating, so that's nice, and we're kind of surrendering. But the fact of the matter is I don't see people destroying sensors or just willfully destroying technology. There's no outbreak of Luddites within our industry. If we're really trying to reframe this or understand what we're saying here, it is that the incentives are too often misaligned, or value creation is too often misaligned. So many PropTech software as a service providers want to charge by the square meter, even though they only add value at a per transaction level. So if you're extracting value disproportionate to what you're adding it, that's not resistance to change, that's a bad business model. So if you want to be self-deprecating, say, I'm probably pricing myself wrong. Data is the new oil. And I apologize to I think the 5 people that said it through the conference today, but this phrase is not wrong. Again, it doesn't have to be false to be not so useful. Really, I believe in this phrase. I believe that data is the new oil, but I subscribe to it in a very particular way. Many people look at this as data is a commodity, and so any data is valuable data. The way I see this, the context in which I understand this, and I think the industry should, is data is the fuel that will power the machines of this next industrial revolution. But the more important part of data is the new oil as a phrase for our industry is the fact that if oil is that valuable, we're sitting on the biggest reserves in history. If data truly is new oil, the real oil sits in the everyday processes. It doesn't, Carolyn spoke just before me and talked about there's so many versions of data visualization. If you looked at a pie chart of data visualization versus data input layers, you wouldn't see the input layers, and that's the problem. When we start integrating into the compliance, inspection, maintenance, the everyday not so pretty processes that go into making buildings run efficiently, when we turn those into data harvesting mechanisms, that's when data will become the new oil, and that's when we can't lag because we will just be gliding so fast. So, the first mover advantage is key. No, it's not. I just told you Apple didn't invent the smartphone. Apple made it accessible. First mover advantage is another one of these intuitive business phrases that MBAs, yes, I don't put it next to my name, but I have one. I'm not all that ashamed of it, but it's one that we use as this crutch. It's this linguistic crutch to say, that sounds really right. But there's a reason this isn't going to get shared on Friendster. And no one's going to be adding me on MySpace after this. And even, most of us have deleted Facebook in the last couple of years, right? Sorry to our client. But the first mover advantage is really not demonstrable. And what it does is create an artificial arms race. Angela alluded nicely to this earlier. So many early stage startups want to say they can do everything because they want to be able to act like they've moved first in all these things. So they do many things, kind of good in science fiction and in PowerPoint presentations, but not in practice. Be good at one thing was a really great piece of advice she offered everyone. So, this one, don't become another insert name here. So when it comes to disruption and trying to motivate change at a sectoral level, so often we hear cautionary tales, right? So my favorites are don't become Blockbuster. For the younger people, I'll explain to you what Blockbuster is afterwards, but don't become Kodak. Yep, I'll explain that one afterwards too. Don't become Nokia. Okay, so thank you for offering me 3 examples from 20 plus years ago from an industry that's nowhere close to what we're dealing with. The biggest cliche, one of the biggest cliches in sort of just general terms that could be applied here is that hindsight is always 20/20. We will not learn how to avoid future mistakes by saying don't repeat those from outside of another industry. The best advice in change management isn't don't repeat the mistakes of others, it is duplicate the successes of the past. The things that went right. No company wants to have a Google Glass moment. Every company wants to become Google. So you make the right mistakes and you duplicate the successes. Not cautionary tales, don't become this. That is really, put simply, that's just evolve or die. And evolve or die is like, might make a great sticker, it's terrible advice for running a business. It's technology looking for a problem to solve. Yeah, there's another one that you hear a lot. And again, it's kind of a filler term. But the fact of the matter is purpose-built tech often doesn't get used for what we think it does. So I'm going to do a quick survey in the room. Sorry for everybody who's watching online. But how many people here have what you call a smartphone? Spoiler alert, every hand went up because, you know, it's been going on for 15 years. How many people here think phone is the #1 app that you use on your smartphone? Spoiler alert, no hands went up. We don't use it as a phone. And Apple didn't call it a smart camera, internet browsing, music streaming podcast device either. Mostly because that's a marketing mouthful, but also because their intended use, their flagship feature was not what ultimately it ended up being in the wild. Technology for technology's sake is a reductive thing that says, I'm not creative enough to figure out how this might be applied to my particular sector. I hate this phrase, and it should only be applied when talking about the metaverse. This is an ESG play. So I know most of you are waiting for when I was going to say something like this, right? But what's more sort of, I guess, alarming, we're all wired to skepticism because this is such a visceral issue to us. We should be hardwired for skepticism whenever anything is presented as an ESG play. But now, sort of the latest trend is this overreaction to that where accusing other things of being greenwashing is kind of the new greenwashing. We're not greenwashing because they're greenwashing, and it's actually just a different version of smoke and mirrors. We're not going to tell you our secret sauce because those people don't tell us their secret sauce, and that must mean it's not real. The reality is with something so critical, if something is as crucial, as urgent as many of us believe the climate crisis is, then we should be sharing knowledge and resources as much as we can. It can't strictly be a capitalistic endeavor. It has to be a shared challenge that we all meet. So ESG play, show me what's under the hood or shut up. That should be how we reframe this conversation. Now, got a last two for you. We've gone from sort of ones that need to be reframed to just ones that literally mean nothing. Change is the only constant. It's just a very dumb phrase. Like, it's literally like, it can't be argued against. It doesn't mean anything. Yes, things are always changing. Yes, everyone likes to think that they adopt to change. We don't. You notice my hairstyle here, I think it took me about 5 years past when I should have adopted this change to kind of realize it. And actually, I blame the pandemic on this one and the adoption of technology because it wasn't until I was on video conferences all the time and a light was shining this way to just show me how much I hadn't adapted to change. But change is the only constant, so now I cut my hair twice a week. The last one. I've tried to have a positive and productive tone so far, but when it comes to this particular cliche, please just stop, okay? Just do not use this one. It is just absolutely the worst. This doesn't mean anything, right? There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Yes, of course there isn't. Even one-size-fits-all clothing just means everyone looks ridiculous in it, but the tag says that's okay, right? When we are trying to have a meaningful and productive conversation, what I hope I've warned you to look out for, wired you to look out for. To be skeptical, please do not be cynical. There is so much great work to be done and being done in the world of prop tech. But when you start to hear some of these, start to ask yourself, has this person, has this company really said anything? And we won't be laggards because we'll all be a little better wired to filter out and separate the signal from the noise. But with all of that, my friends online, we are going to go upstairs and head to happy hour. So thank you to Asia PropTech for allowing JLL to host this and for putting together an absolutely wonderful conference and not making us hear these cliches too much throughout the day. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Jordan. What a very entertaining and insightful speech. I very much enjoyed that.